Okay. So we were looking at caches. So I'll just recap what we were saying. So we said that this was an important equation. The average memory access time is equal to hit time plus miss rate into miss penalty. So we said that we want to reduce the average memory access time because any access, if there's a load instruction, any access is stuck at the pipeline and it will not allow other instructions to go forward. So I want to reduce the average access memory access time. So the way to reduce the average memory access time is to reduce either the hit time, either the miss rate or the miss penalty. So we said that, okay, I can reduce the hit time by having a smaller cache, but having a smaller cache will increase the miss rate. Of course, I can also reduce the miss rate by having a larger cache, but if I have a larger cache, then the hit time increases. So it's like there's no one bullet that you can bite and say that I am done. So there are multiple facets to this. So we also said that having a larger block size will decrease the miss rate, but having a larger block size will also increase the miss rate because now, if there is no special locality, then you might miss out and the miss rate might increase. We also said that we can reduce the miss penalty by having multiple levels of cache. We say that we have one level of cache where the access times are faster. But this why is the access time faster? Because it's a very small cache, so maybe around 32 KB to 64 KB or 8 kilobytes to 32 kilobytes. And then we have a level 2 cache, which is a bigger cache. And we said that this level 2 cache is bigger, the access times are higher. So whatever is missed in the L1 cache will be searched in the L2 cache. So we said that now the equation is no longer hit time plus miss rate into miss penalty. It's hit time of L1 plus miss rate of L1 into miss penalty of L1. Miss penalty of L1 is the amount of cycles it takes, number of cycles it takes to get data from the next level cache. So that is the hit time of L2 plus miss rate of L2 into miss penalty of L2. Miss penalty of L2 is, since it's connected to the main memory, it's the access time of the main memory. So that's the equation that we came up with. So the one equation that you have to remember is average memory access time is equal to hit time plus miss rate into miss penalty. And then we asked interesting questions like what happens if I have multiple levels of cache? So should is it an inclusive cache, exclusive cache, or non-inclusive cache? So what did we say about inclusive cache? When I bring, so now there are two levels of the cache, and considering a single core machine, there's two level caches. And we said that the inclusive cache is always strictly inclusive, which means that when I bring a block, so let's say the CPU generated an address, 0x3e block address. Now I'm talking about a block address. The CPU generated a 0x3 block address. The way it happens is that you go to the main memory. Of course, we add more and more components as we go ahead in the course. So we go to the main memory, we fetch the block 0x3, and now the question is, do I directly place it in L1? Of course, when the CPU generates 0x3, you would have searched in L1, it is a miss. Then you would have searched in L2, it's a miss, and then only you would have gone to the main memory. So you searched, since it's not there in any of the caches, you went to the main memory, you brought it, and now the question is, do I keep it only in L1 or I keep it in both the places? So that was the question. What does inclusive cache do? It says, when I bring a block from the main memory, I keep it in all levels of cache. So I keep it both in L1 and L2. So that's L2 is inclusive of L1. An exclusive cache doesn't do that. So when a 0x3 is generated, it will search in L1, it's a miss. Then it goes and searches in L2, it's a miss. Then it goes to the main memory. But when it brings the blocks to the block from the main memory, it keeps it only in the level 1 cache. And when the block is removed from L1 because of the replacement policy, it will be pushed to the L2 cache. And if it's again a hit, then it will be removed from L2 cache and kept in L1 cache. It's an exclusive cache. And a non-inclusive cache is neither there nor here, it's in the mid, which means that when I bring, I keep it both in L1 and L2. But when I kick out a block from L2, I don't touch the L1. But here, since I'm maintaining strict inclusivity, if I kick out a block from L2, I make sure that the block is also removed from L1. Now, the way point I remember where we stopped was, if the block is removed from L2, is there a chance that, let's say I am following LRU replacement policy for this particular L2 and also LRU policy for this particular L1, then is there a chance that this particular block 1 and both are, say, four-way associative caches, is there a chance that when B1 is kicked out, when B1 is identified as a replacement candidate, can B1 not be, I mean, can B1 still be here in L1 and maybe in an MRE position? Can such a thing exist? Is the question. So do you have an answer now? Or do you think that such a thing does not exist?
So you said associativity is also same for both, and block size
Yes.
also same. So
Yes.
I don't see any possibility. for.
Okay. Does anybody else see any possibility? I mean, I know that I have to still go to prices. Somehow I am falling behind a lot in a lot of things. So I'll try to send the price, but this will also carry a price. So whoever answers this will get a price. So the question is simple. Did you understand the question? Okay, just answer this poll. Did you understand the question? Forget about the answer. Did you understand the question? Okay. Some of you haven't understood. Okay. Okay. So I'll repeat the question. So I hope you have understood what is an inclusive cache. So what do I mean by inclusive cache? I hope that is clear, right? So when I bring a block in, you can answer that so that it's clear from where to start. So did you understand what is an inclusive cache? What is an exclusive cache and what is a non-inclusive cache? Okay. I think that is clear. So okay, the question is not clear. So what is happening here is this. So let's say I have the CPU. I have two levels of cache. Let's say it's a four-way associative cache. It's a four-way associative cache. And then I have, let's say it's a fully associative cache. Let's assume that it's a fully associative cache, but not even four-way associative. And this is also fully associative. This is fully associative. This is fully associative. This implements LRU. This implements LRU. And this is the main memory. Since this is a bigger cache, there are many more blocks that can be stored here. Okay. Now let's assume there is a block B1 in this cache, and there's a block B1, same block here. Right? So it's both here and here. Now let's assume that this is the MRU position. Of course, in hardware it doesn't happen this way. You might already know this. In hardware it doesn't happen this way. But let's say the B1 is somewhere here, which means that it is in the LRU position, and you bring a block. New block, you bring a new block, say you bring a new block B2, and since it's inclusive cache, so I try to keep it both in L2 cache and L1 cache. So I brought a block B2 because the CPU generated an address B2 and B2 was not present in the cache. So I brought the block B2 to be kept both in L2 and L1. Now in the L2 cache, the replacement candidate is B1, which means that B1 should be replaced. B1 should be replaced by B2. Correct? B1 should be replaced by B2 because B1 is in the least recently used position. Now my question is, if B1 is a candidate in the level 2 cache, is there a chance that B1 is still there in L1 cache? It should not be possible.
Can this happen that the LRU for the above L1 cache is different from LRU from the lower?
No, it's the same. It's the same LRU. So the replacement policy is called LRU, least recently used policy.
No, sir. Like what I mean is that if let's say in above cache I'm using B1 again and again, but
yes, right.
from the lower cache I'm not taking B1. So for the lower cache, B1 is not B1 won't be like.
Yes, that's the reason. That's what we run into. Of course, you'll not get the price because you've already got the price. But yes, the answer is right. So what might happen is this. So you just have to visualize this, right? Let's say Let's say when the system started, let's say there was no B2. You brought B1, right? You brought block B1. So you kept here and here, and the CPU is generating accesses like this: B1, B2, B1, B3, B1, B4, B1, B5, B1, B6. Now, when the CPU is generating B1, you don't go to the next level, right? You don't go to the next level cache. You don't just go to the next level cache. Because why do you go to the next level cache? Because you search it here, the block is a hit in L1 cache, which means that this is directly serviced here. That information is not passed on to the level 2 cache. Do you agree? So that information is not passed on to the level 2 cache. So here the B1 will always end up being in the MRU position, right? So it will go here and again come back to the MRU position. It will go here, come back to the MRU position. But whereas this B1 will go like this and will finally go to the LRU position. Because the access of B1 is not going to the level 2 cache. So you should keep in mind that when you search the level 1 cache, if it's a hit, then you service the request. You go to the next level cache, which means that the replacement policy at the level 2 cache is not updated. Right? So do you agree to this? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this possibility is there, but in inclusive caches, please answer this so that we can move forward. Okay. So this possibility is there in an inclusive cache. So what happens in an inclusive cache is when I kick out a block from LRU position, when I kick out a block from the LRU position, I send something called a back signal. So I say to the L1, hey, I am removing a block called B1. If you have this block, even though it is in MRU position, please remove it because I have to maintain strict inclusivity. So even though B1 might be in MRU, you are removing that block from the L1 cache because you are maintaining the inclusivity of that particular cache. But whereas in non-inclusive cache, if you remove a block from last level cache, you are not sending a back signal. You are not saying to L1 saying that please remove this block. The block can continue to be in L1. So there might be a stage in the execution where L1 is not strictly, L2 is not strictly inclusive of L1. That's why it's called a non-inclusive cache. In exclusive cache, this problem will not come because you are saying when I bring a block, I push it only into L1, and then if it is removed, then I keep it to L2, and then I keep moving back and forth from L2 to L1. It makes a roundabout turn from, I mean, it goes around, round and round. It goes from L1 to L2, from L2 to again maybe to L1, again to L2, again to L1. So this can keep going around in an exclusive cache. So as I told you in the last class, AMD started with these exclusive caches. The reason is very simple because you are utilizing the cache capacity to the best possible thing because you are not duplicating in any entry. If you look at it, why do you want to duplicate the entry, right? So can anybody give me a reason why I want to have an inclusive or a non-inclusive cache, or forget about non-inclusive? Why would you want to have an inclusive cache?
So it may be due to some data correction.
No, right? No, what kind of data correction?
So if like one data is corrupted, so we can recover from.
No, right? So there is no, if the data is corrupt, the CPU doesn't have any data recovery, it just fails. And if there's a, let's assume that there is a hardware failure, right? Let's say there is a hardware failure and this B1 is corrupted. There is no way that the system will go further and check in L2 because there is error correction that is happening and figured out that B2 is, so there is no error correction built into cache. Of course, this in today's world because we are building already error correction into main memory. That will be one of your topics that I will be discussing later. But here in L1, there is no error correction. Even if the data is correct, I will only check the address, and if it's a hit, I will return back this B1. I will not even go to the correct data because I can't, as a cache controller, this girl cannot differentiate whether it's right data or wrong data. Even this guy sitting here cannot decide whether it's right data or wrong data, right? So even if you have duplicate entries, you cannot correct the errors. So any other reason why Intel might have taken that approach, or AMD later might have taken that approach? Any guess is fine. Again, this will carry a price. Okay, I will give you some time. Maybe tomorrow you can think about it sometime, and in the next class we can discuss about it. Okay, so now let's say assume that we already know about what is an inclusive cache, what is an exclusive cache, and non-inclusive cache. There's one more talk. Go ahead.
One note. Since L2 cache is bigger than L1 cache, new data comes in. No collision in L2, but there is collision in L1. What happens then?
So there is nothing called no collision, right? So actually, this point somebody else also brought it up. There is nothing called no collision. There will always be collision. There will always be data in L2. So you will have to replace some block or the other. It is not like this L2 will be half full at given point of time. The L2 can store only say 8 MB of data, and your process will be around 1 GB or 2 GB or whatever it is, right? So this L2 will always be full. There is nothing called not full L2 data. So there will always be collision. So when I map it to something, I will have to replace something. Even if it's fully associative cache, you will have to replace something. So there is nothing called maybe L2 is half in half. That's what you're asking, right? I'm assuming that's what you're asking. Maybe you're saying that L2 is half full because L1 is bigger than L1. Maybe this is half full. So that's why I should only keep it in L2. Why keep it in L1? Because L1 is fully full. That's what you're saying, right? If I'm right.
Yes.
So you are visualizing something like this. You are saying that L1 is fully full, L2 is only like half filled up. So there is some empty space here, and you want to keep that block in L2. Why keep it in L1? Because there is a collision. But that case does not exist because there is nothing called half full in a cache. It's not like if I ask you what is the size of a cube data structure, you can tell me what is the size of cube. You can tell me what is the size of what is the size of a stack. But in the cache, you cannot define what is the size it was occupied at any given point of time. It is always 8 MB and you are always utilizing the 8 MB. Whether how effectively it is utilized, it's different. But it is not the case that you have not written any data here. There is no such case that you have not written the data here. If that doesn't make sense? Yeah, you'll quickly figure this out when you're doing your assignment. You will also figure it out that there's nothing of that sort. And I hope also the other thing is I hope you are doing the assignment, the project. If you are stuck somewhere, please let me know. In the lab next Thursday, I will be building a small tool which does this cache, but I will not be using the pipeline here, but I will be using the pipeline of your system, which means that an x86 architecture. I will be using the pipeline and then building a cache on my own in this Thursday's lab. But if you have any other questions regarding the project, please let me know. Please spend some time so that you'll understand it better. Okay. Are there any other questions regarding this inclusive, exclusive, and non-inclusive caches? Okay, so we will go forward. We will say what happens on a write. So this is also an important question. So what did we say? We said we understood what is a cache. Then we said how is the cache accessed? You should remember that the cache is accessed by using the address. The address is virtually split or logically split into three parts: the tag, index, and offset. Index is used to index to a particular set, and tag is used to search in the entire set how many other blocks are there in that particular set, and offset is used to read a particular byte from the block. And cache block size is bigger than 1 byte, maybe 64 bytes, maybe 32 bytes, but memory is always byte addressable. That will never change, hopefully at least for a few more years. Maybe your grandkids might say that the memories are not byte addressable anymore. I don't know, but anyway. But as of now, the memory is byte addressable. And so we used index, so we used tag, index, and offset. Of course, the index bits will be 0 for a fully associative cache because there's only one set. The index bit number of index bits will be higher for a direct map cache. And then we said, how do I replace a block? So we said that there are replacement policies available for you. So there is one random replacement policy, least recently used policy, not recently used policy. You can also come up with something called FIFO policy, first in, first out policy. You can come up with your own replacement policies. There are hundreds and hundreds of papers written just on replacement policies. And then we said, what is the average memory access time? Average memory access time is equal to hit time plus miss rate into miss penalty. We saw techniques to reduce the hit time or miss rate or miss penalty. One of the techniques to reduce miss penalty is to have multi-levels of cache. And we saw that how can we handle data in multi-levels of cache? But there's one more question that is associated with the multi-level cache. What happens on a write? So there are two different things that happen on a write, two things that you can do on a write. So that's what we'll see now. Let's say we have a CPU, we have L1 cache, and then we have L2 cache. Of course, I will explain it from the point of view of an inclusive cache, but this holds true for the exclusive cache also. This is main. So when the CPU generates a write, it's a write for block B1. And let's say the block B1 is here and also here. And anyway, you are very sure that block B1 is also here. So when the CPU generates a write, you can adopt a write through policy. What do I mean by write through policy? I'll write it down. It's called write through policy. What do I mean by write through policy? When I generate a write, I update B1 here, I update B1 here, and I update B1 here. If it was an exclusive cache, I update B1 here and here because it will not be there in the L2 cache. But let's assume that we are using an inclusive cache. The write through policy says that when I generate a write, I write it to L1 cache, L2 cache, and to the main memory. So that is called a write through cache. Okay. And there is something called a write back cache. So what do I mean by write back cache? When I generate a write, I write it only to B1. Only to B1. I set the dirty bit as 1. When the block is removed from L1, I update the content in the next level. And when this block is removed from L2, I update the content to the main memory. That's why it's called write back. I write it back only after the block is removed from the higher level cache by using the dirty bit. So there is a write through cache, there is a write back cache. It's up to you what you want to implement. You can implement a write through cache or a write back cache. Similarly, this is when the CPU generates a write. There is something called what happens. We also have to ask what happens if the block is not there in the cache. Let's assume this scenario. I have something like this. I have L1 cache, I have L2 cache, I have main memory. CPU generates a block address B1. It is not there here, it is not there here. You went here, right? When you bring a block, this is for a write. When you bring a block B1, when you bring a block, you can actually give it to the CPU directly. Okay. This policy is called no write allocate, which means that I don't allocate the block in the cache. I don't allocate the block in the cache when there's a write generated. It actually doesn't even happen this way. So when I generate a write, I directly go to the main memory. I directly go to the main memory and I write the block B1 into the main memory. I don't touch the cache at all. So this is called no write allocate. A write allocate is something like this. When the CPU generates a block B1, I bring the block from the main memory. If it's inclusive cache, I keep it both here and update the contents here, depending on whether it's write through or write back. So I place the block. I allocate a block in the cache if it's a write miss. So that is called write allocate. I don't allocate the block if it's a write miss. That is called no write allocate. So there are 4 things now. There is a write back cache, write through cache, write allocate, no write allocate. So you can implement a write through cache with write allocate, no write allocate. You can implement write back cache with write allocate, no write allocate. But generally, you implement write through cache. Can you tell me if you pick write through cache, will you pick write allocate or no write allocate? So let's say you have come up with a design choice. You said that I will pick a write through cache, which means that when you update here, you update everywhere. Now you have to pick what happens when I bring a block. When the write has been generated, that block is not there in the cache. Will you have write through with no write allocate or write allocate? Any answer is fine.
The write allocate, because you have to keep it in every block, cache block.
Why?
So since whatever will be in L1, we have to keep in
No, see, no write allocate means I am not fetching either here or here. I am not even fetching the block. I am not keeping it in any.
No, sir. I said write allocate.
Okay, yeah, but why do you want write allocate for write through? I mean, why not no write allocate? What happens if I have no write allocate? Why should you club write through with no write allocate or write allocate? See, you have already chosen write through. Now will you choose no write allocate or write allocate? You just answer if you understood this question or not. Forget about the answer. If you have understood this question or not. So you have chosen write through cache. Now you have to choose what happens when I bring a block. So should I have write allocate? Okay, a lot of people haven't understood this. I will repeat again. See, now there are when the CPU generates a read, I have no issues, right? So when the CPU generates the read, I bring it. I am assuming that I'll keep it in the cache in both levels of cache. If it is inclusive cache, I'll keep it in only L1 cache. If it is an exclusive cache, and things like that. I hope this is clear, right? So this exclusive part, what happens on a read is clear. But my question, but what we are thinking now is, what happens on a write? The CPU has generated a write, which means that it's a store instruction, and it is for block B1. Okay, so now it has generated for B1. What do you mean by write through cache? If it's a hit in L1, I update the contents here. If it's a hit in L2, I update the contents here, and then I'll update the content here. That is a write through. I write through all levels of cache. That's why it's called write through cache. Which means that if suppose a B1 had a variable where x equal to 8, right? You update the content 8 here, you update the content 8 here, you update the content 8 here. That is a write through cache. What is a write back cache? If it is like this, you update 8 here, maybe this is still having some stale value 9, maybe this is also having 9. When will this become 8? When this block moves here and gets kicked out. When this block is kicked out from L1, this 9 will be replaced by 8. And when will this become 8? When this block is kicked out and written here, and this will become 8. So you are writing back by using a dirty bit. So you are it's a write back cache because you don't update all levels of main memory, all levels of memory, but you update only when the block is removed. So that's a write back cache. Is this clear?
Yes.
Okay. So similarly, now we ask what if this write is a hit, but what if the write is a miss? If the write, the block B1, you generated an address and you are trying to write something to the block B1 and it is not there in the cache. It is not here or not here. It's not in the two levels of cache. Now, when I generate a write, I go to the main memory. I can just update the main memory directly without bringing into the cache. So that is called no write allocate. I don't allocate a block. I don't allocate a block in the cache when there is a write that is generated. If it is a write allocate cache, since the block is not there, I will keep it, if it's an inclusive cache, I will keep it here and update the contents of B1. Now my question is, you have come up with a choice, you want to choose between write through and write back. That is what happens if the CPU generated a write and the block is there in the cache. So maybe you picked up write through. Okay. Now the next design choice that you have is you can, what happens when you bring the block? Let's say this block was not there in the cache. What is the policy that you will adhere to? Will you pick a no write allocate policy or a write allocate policy? That's the question.
So can we do a no write and then bring the blocks?
Why will you bring a block? No write allocate.
Because I might need to refer to it later.
If the CPU generates a read again, then anyway the read will bring the block to the cache.
So, but now since I've got a write, then I know that I might need it later, so I can bring it to the cache, right, for a later load.
Yeah, then it's a write allocate policy, not a no write allocate policy.
Okay, okay.
See, write allocate is you're bringing into the cache. No write allocate is you're not bringing into the cache. I know these questions are tricky, but once you know the answer, you'll say, okay, only this much. I mean, these guys are just making a big thing out of nothing. So can you tell me if you understood the question? See, always in RCA, the most important thing is understanding the question, because all answers are right answers. Like now what Devesh said, right? I want to bring it. Yes, that's the right answer. You can bring it to the cache. I mean, I'm not saying you can't bring it to the cache. It's just that in name says no write allocate, write allocate. You can bring it to the cache. So all answers in computer architecture are right. I mean, there is no wrong answer, unless you come up with something totally bullshit, right? But it's almost always right. So understanding the question is more important. So if you understood the question, you can now try to answer. So now say, let's say I picked up write through. Does it make sense for me to pick a no write allocate policy?
Yes, sir, I think we can do that.
Why? So does it make sense to pick a write allocate policy? Does it make sense for me to pick a write allocate policy?
Only if you have reason to believe that you'll need the block again in the cache. You have good reason to believe that. Otherwise, it doesn't.
See, when you say I need the block again, it might be for a write or for a read. Okay. Let's say I'm generating a write. I'm always generating a write to the block B1. I'm not generating a read, but I'm always generating a write to the block B1. My writes are very high to B1. Reads are very low to B1. And you have already chosen write through policy. Will you pick a write allocate or a no write allocate policy?
I will choose no write allocate.
No write allocate. Why? Because anyway you are going, see, what is no write allocate? What is write through saying? You anyway go to the main memory for every write that is generated. For every write that is generated, you are anyway going till here. Right? You are always going till here. You are always going here. Even for a single write, you are going till the main memory. So what's the point of me bringing and keeping the block in the cache? There's no point, right? Because anyway I'm going to the main memory for any write that is being generated. So when you pick a write through policy, you pick a no write allocate policy. But if you are picking a write back policy, it makes sense for me to have a write allocate policy. Why? Because write back will be updating only when the block is picked out. So I will keep the block here such that my assumption is that the future writes will be only to this cache and I don't have to go to the main memory. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. If we think in this way, then I think write back policy is much better than write through.
Yeah, that we haven't discussed. I mean, that we'll discuss now. But forget about what is better. But my question is, did you understand? If I pick a write through cache, I will pick a no write allocate policy. If I pick a write back cache, I will pick a write allocate policy. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
I hope it makes sense. If you have questions, please ask me. As I said, it takes some time to filter it out, but once you filter it out, it's always there for your life. You'll never forget this. It's not like I read every day this, right? So it's just that it's there because it's like cycling. Of course, I mean, nobody is stopping you to pick write through and write allocate. You can do it. I mean, you can come up with a processor which says, okay, but that doesn't make sense logically, right? Because anyway, you are going through. But if you're very sure that there's one write and then followed by many writes like Debussy said, then yeah, maybe write through with write allocate. Maybe that makes sense.
So if you go with write back and no write, will there be any problem?
Then there's no use, right? What's the use? Because you'll always miss in the cache. Because you're not allocated on the. So let's assume that I picked write back policy and no write allocate policy. Okay. What happens? The CPU generates a write. It is not there in the cache. It's not there in the cache. You went to the main memory and then you wrote that data. You didn't bring it to the cache. Now, if the CPU generates another write, it will again have to go to the main memory because you picked no write allocate. You have never kept the block B2 in the cache. Does it make sense?
So except for if it was in the cache already.
If it was in the cache, then yes. But how will it be in the cache?
From some read. From some
read, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But then it will not break anything.
Yeah, so this is also valid, right? Like there's no big issue.
There's no issue as such. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's no correctness tamper. I mean, anything that you do in the cache will generally not tamper the correctness. It's just that the performance will either go up or go down.
Yes, sir.
Is this clear? If you have questions, please ask me. I can explain again. Yeah, please answer the poll. If you are clear, then we'll go further. Okay, I think somewhat it's clear to most of you. Okay, so now somebody asked, write back is better. Okay, now you tell me, you know that there is write through and write back. Is there a chance that you will pick write through at any given point of time? In what case will you pick a write through cache?
So in case of non-inclusive cache?
No, right? It has nothing to do with inclusive or non-inclusive or anything of this sort. Because write back and write through are, even if there is one level cache, you're asking whether I bring it to the main cache or not cache. Like inclusive and non-inclusive generally come in multi-level caches. But write back, write through, I just tried to explain it using multi-level cache because it will be more clearer, but you can have just one level cache and ask the same question, whether I bring it to the cache or not, whether I write to the cache and the main memory or just write to the cache or not. So when will you use? I mean, when can you? I mean, when does it make sense?
Maybe when someone else is using the main memory at the same time.
Excellent. But who is that someone else?
Another processor.
Can somebody else use the main memory other than the processor? I'm not saying you're wrong. You're actually right. But who uses main memory other than the processor? Like if you plug in RAM, go ahead.
So when the main memory is refreshing?
No, for that it doesn't make any, I mean, it doesn't change anything. It's still the processor that is using, it's a memory controller that is using, but it's not using it, the data that, see, when you're refreshing, you're not actually using the data for some computation purpose. You're just reading and writing. Whatever is there, you're reading and writing. It doesn't matter whether you're writing stale value, because anyway, the original value is there in the cache, and it's flushed out, it will always be into the main memory. It's not using it.
Yes, sir. So like, who other than the processor is using the main memory? So the main memory itself.
No, it's not using it. See, when I ask using, I'm not saying whether it's reading the data. I'm saying, is somebody reading and doing computation? So why, when I say processor using this data, what is it using for? It is using this value 8, doing some maybe x is equal to y plus 9 and doing some computation on this data. Maybe this y is 8. So it is doing some computation on this data. That's why it's using this data. It's not just reading the data for fun and just rewriting it back, right? It's not doing it.
Okay.
So who else is using the data other than the processor? You know this answer.
So the operating system and the connection with secondary memory.
The operating system is part of the processor, right? So it's like it's another process, but somebody else is also using it. You are almost there, but it's not the right answer. Okay, let's say you plug in an USB disk. Like let's say you push an USB thing into your system, and you want to copy something to the USB or from the USB to your thing. Do you think the CPU will be involved in it, or the CPU will not be involved in it? Let's say you are designing the processor and somebody is using the USB, right? So will your program be involved? Will the processor be involved in the disk from the USB to your hard disk when you are copying, or from the hard disk to the USB you are copying? Should you make the CPU be involved in it? Like, will the CPU read it? Will there be a cache miss? And then it will actually generate a write. Right? It's like, let's say you plug in the USB, right? Let's say you plug in the USB, right? There are two levels of cache. And then there is this main memory, right? So now the CPU generated a read, and it's a file read, which means that you actually read the data, store the variable, and then write it back. So are you doing that? Is the CPU, when I say CPU, is this entire thing involved in it? Or would you not involve the CPU?
If I can copy without its involvement, then I don't have to do it.
But can you do it without involvement?
So you need the CPU, right? Everything has to come into the main memory and then get copied.
Yeah, so that's the question. So do you think that it should be that way, or is there a shortcut to it? See, for me, for a CPU, it does not make any sense, right? So just reading from a file, it's not even thinking what is there in this file. It's not acting upon the data on the file. See, I'm just copying the movie from the hard disk to the USB disk. So I'm not even enjoying the movie, right?
Sir, you told us earlier about Southbridge.
Yes, excellent. Yeah, excellent. What is that? Yeah, what is that?
Southbridge, right? South.
So there is something called DMA, direct memory access, which the CPU says, okay, this guy is just copying files or just doing some memory IO. So I will not be involved in it. I will give you the total control of this process. You take care of it, and you tell me after the transfer is complete. And the CPU will go and tell the operating system that I have initiated a DMA transfer. This process is just copying from this to this. I don't want to be involved. If there is another process that is waiting for me to execute, I will execute that process. And the operating system will schedule some other process. This entire thing is handled by a controller called Direct Memory Access Controller, DMA, which you will be seeing in the later part of the course. So an IO can access the main memory directly. Of course, this was not the straight answer, because you will ask then, why is it accessing the main memory? There are reasons to add for the memory IO to access the main memory. We will not get into all these things. But what you have to know is this, that there are cases where a write-through cache makes sense, but generally these days we still implement only write-back caches and handle the complexity of memory IO and coherence issues using complicated mechanism. But if you had a write-through cache, then something called coherence would have been easier and memory IO would have been easier. But you just have to know that there are these design choices which people have consciously taken. Is this clear? Okay, something here might not be clear, that's why I'm not putting up the poll. It's okay if it is not clear, but the idea is that there is something called write-through, write-back cache. There's no write allocate policy, write allocate policy. If you pick a write-through cache, you pick a no write allocate policy. If you pick a write-back cache, you pick a write allocate policy, because it makes logical sense. Now, why do I pick a write-through policy when compared to a write-back policy? The answer is much more deeper than what we can expect here. So as and when I talk about coherence messages, I will bring this policy back and see which one is advantageous for a multi-core processor. Okay.
So what is the Southbridge here in this?
So one thing is, okay, okay, this is for the entire class. Today, please go and read, okay, as Amit pointed out, I had talked about the Southbridge and the Northbridge in the first class. Maybe then you might not have appreciated it. Now, since you know something about memory, something about caches, try to go and read about what's the difference between the Southbridge and the Northbridge. It's in the motherboard. It doesn't come with the processor. There's something called Northbridge and they are chips on their own. So just read about what is Southbridge and Northbridge. We will discuss during the, but please read about it.
Sir, one more thing, like you were saying about multi-core processor. So how will this write back policy will be helpful in this multi-core?
Write through will be kind of helpful.
Write back will help, right? If one processor is accessing and writing, so it may be that the other processor is also updating the value.
So what Abhit Bhai is asking this, I have something like, there are two cores. This is core 0, this is core 1. I have L1 cache, which is private to me. And there is a bus that is going around. And then there is L2 cache. And then there is main memory. So I brought a block B1 to L1, L2 cache. I brought a block B1 here. I brought a block B1 here. Core 0 generated a write. So you maybe updated P1 to value 8. Okay. And at later some point in time, core 1 generated a write and maybe it generated 9. Now when core 0 reads, should it read 8 or 9? See, core 0 generated address B1, it updated the value 8. Then in the next cycle, core 1 generated the address write for B1 and it generated 9. Now core 1 reads, should it get 8 or 9? Should it get 8 or 9? If you are a programmer, what would you expect?
I
Nine.
think 8 on.
Yeah? Sorry?
I think 8 on this.
8 only, why 8? 9, right?
It
Because
should be 9, right? I mean,
9, right? Yes. 9, right? Or do you disagree? So people have been, so this is what is all about coherence. So there is a bus that is going around and that's what we will be seeing later in the class if time permits. I hope the time permits because I don't want to leave without teaching coherence. Because then I see one thing is I know that you will not take computer architecture elective and you,
Sir,
uh-huh.
the reason why I thought C0 should read 8 is C0 and C1 might be executing different programs. So,
No, let's say they are the same. Yes, excellent. But they are say, let's say a very good one. Who's this? Huh? Ashrito, yeah, it's one of the more very wonderful questions because what you are talking about is the difference between a distributed memory programming and a state memory programming, which you will be learning in parallel computing when you come, if you pick 4th year elective, parallel computing. So yes, you are right. If there are two different processes, then it should pick 8. But here my assumption was that both are running the same program, but having two different threads. It's a shared memory program. Yeah, you might not understand what it means, but yeah. There might be a case that both these cores are executing the same program. It's called shared memory because they are just two threads, thread 0 and thread 1 of the same program. Maybe they are doing matrix study. They are summing up an entire array and finding out what is the summation, what is the total of that values in the array. Like let's say I have an array, I have 1 billion elements, and I'm trying to find the total of it, total of all the elements. So maybe I have given this particular array to thread 0 and this particular array to thread 1 and the total is being calculated. It's the same program that is running. And maybe this B1 is containing the variable total. Maybe the B1 is containing the variable total. So which means that it should read 9 now, right? Now, does it make sense?
yes, sir.
Yeah, but you are right. If it's distributed, which means that there are two processes, you are completely right. But then, though this address of B1 here might be same, it will be different here. And we'll see why it will be different here. Okay. Okay, I take the attendance and then